Hello friends, in this video we are going to address how to explain ETL project in an interview. So many of you have asked in the channel, if the interviewer asks what is ETL, how to address that. So there are two things you have to know. Before you explain what is ETL or how ETL is implemented, you have to know why ETL. So I have divided into number of chapters. So if you are already aware of all this, so make sure you arrange everything in an end-to-end ETL journey and explain. Or if you are not aware of, try to listen and learn the things and prepare yourself for the interview. Okay. So the opening part you have to do this way is just 30 seconds. You have to explain why ETL and what problem ETL solves. Okay. Then we'll deep dive into the business problem and the objective of the ETL. Then ETL architecture and data flow. Then transformation logic. So how the transformation logic happens, and finally the data is loaded into the target system and settles there. What is ETL and what is ELT process? Then tools and technologies used to implement ETL. Scheduling and load type. What is incremental load? What is CDC, which is called change data capture. So if you talk about all these practical aspects of ETL, the interviewer will definitely have a good opinion about you. Then how do you handle errors, and what is DLQ? It is called dead letter queue. And what is data stream processing and batch processing? Like data stream processing mainly used using Kafka and other modern systems like Pulsar and different AWS services. And what is batch processing? Then performance optimization, like how do you address your SQL queries and how do you fine tune it, and what is database partitioning, and challenges and learning in ETL, and you have to close the interview. Okay. And in this video, I have created a kind of video podcast with addressing specific questions where interviewer and the candidate are talking. You can listen to that conversation. It's in American English. So I have taken the help of AI to tailor this interview, and the data I have fed, including my ETL knowledge. So you can listen carefully. It is just a matter of, I think, 10 to 12 minutes. You can complete on the go. And the second aspect is I've also created a audio podcast where you don't have to watch. You just put it into the phone or in the laptop and just start listening. Close your eyes and listen. So that will also give you how to address a ETL question in an interview. Okay. You'll also know about why the microservices are important in a ETL implementation process, and partitioning and co-release, multi-stage validation, and all this data quality is the very fundamental aspects of ETL you have to know. Okay. So let's jump into action now.
So, to make this super practical, we're actually going to role-play an interview. I'll be both the interviewer and the candidate. This way, you can see exactly how to structure your answer from beginning to end to make a fantastic impression. Okay, so the scene is set. You're in an interview for that dream ETL developer job. You're feeling good, the coffee is kicked in, and the hiring manager leans in and asks that first big question. And there it is, the classic opener. They're not just asking about code. They want to know if you get the bigger picture. How you answer this first question really sets the tone for the rest of the conversation. Definitely. So in my last role, the sales team was really struggling because their data was completely fragmented. It was scattered across a SQL database, a third-party API, and a bunch of daily CSV files. This made reporting incredibly slow and often inaccurate. My main objective was to fix that by creating a single source of truth in our data warehouse. I was responsible for the whole thing, designing and building the entire ETL pipeline from scratch. The end result was that the sales team could finally make much faster, and more importantly, more accurate data-driven decisions. See what happened there? The answer didn't start with Python or SQL or any specific tool. It started with a business problem, and it ended with a business outcome. This immediately tells the interviewer that you're not just a coder, you're a problem solver who understands how to create real business value. Okay, so you've got them hooked with the why. They get it. Now they're going to want to dig into the how. Let's see how our candidate breaks down all the technical stuff without just overwhelming the interviewer with jargon. The interviewer is leaning in. They're interested. They see you get the business side of things, and now they're ready to hear about your technical chops. Of course, the architecture was a pretty standard, robust ETL pattern. First, we would extract all the raw data from the different sources and land it in a staging area in AWS S3. This was great because it let us do some initial validation without messing with the live source systems. From there, the real transformation logic kicked in. We did things like cleansing address data, standardizing all the product codes, joining sales data with our customer information, and aggregating daily sales figures. Once everything was clean and structured, we loaded it into our Redshift data warehouse. Now the questions are getting even more specific. They want to know about the choices you made and what actual tools you have hands-on experience with. For this project, we went with a daily batch processing approach. The sales team really just needed reliable reports at the end of each day, so real-time data wasn't a necessity. This made batch processing the most efficient and cost-effective way to go. While I have worked with streaming tools like Kafka for things like live fraud detection, for this particular business need, it would have been total overkill. Sure. For the tech stack, our core ETL logic was built using Informatica Power Center. The data sources themselves were a mix of Microsoft SQL Server and PostgreSQL. The whole operation was hosted on AWS. We used S3 for the staging area and Redshift for our data warehouse. To schedule everything and manage all the dependencies, we relied on Apache Airflow. And I also wrote a few custom Python scripts to handle parsing some of the trickier JSON responses we got from one of the APIs.
Now this next part is really what separates a good answer from a truly great one. I mean, building a pipeline is one thing, but making it reliable enough for production, that's where you really show your senior level thinking.
This question is all about operational excellence. Can they trust you to build something that's not going to break in the middle of the night? That's a super important point. For scheduling, we used Airflow to run daily incremental loads. This was way more efficient because we only processed new or changed data each day. To make sure that data quality was high, we built validation rules right into the pipeline. Simple stuff like checking for null primary keys or invalid date formats. Now, if a record failed one of those checks, we didn't just drop it. We routed it to what we called a dead letter queue in S3, which is basically just a holding pen for bad records so we could analyze them later. And of course, we set up automated alerts so the team would get notified immediately if any job failed or if data quality issues popped up.
Okay, so you've covered reliability. The next big question for any data role is always about scale. Can your solution handle the data load not just today, but a year from now?
Yeah, performance was a huge focus for us. We attacked it from a few different angles. First, we went through and optimized several slow-running SQL queries by adding the right indexes. A really big win came from partitioning our main sales table in Redshift by date, which made the sales team's reports run dramatically faster. We also configured Informatica to use its parallel processing features to get through the larger data loads more quickly. And I made it a regular habit to review query execution plans to proactively find any new bottlenecks before they became a problem.
And this is how you stick the landing. The final piece of the puzzle is showing that you don't just do the work, you reflect on it, you learn from it, and you grow.
The classic behavioral question. They want to see how you handle tough situations and what lessons you actually take away from them.
The biggest challenge was actually an external API that would sometimes change its JSON format without any warning, which would cause our whole pipeline to fail. To fix this, I wrote a much more robust Python parsing script that could handle things like nested keys and missing fields gracefully. But the bigger fix was that I reached out to the team that owned the API and worked with them to establish a formal schema contract. For me, the key takeaway was just how critical it is to profile your data sources really early on and to be proactive about communicating with the people who own them. It honestly saves so much headache down the road.
And there you have it, a complete, well-structured, and honestly a pretty compelling way to explain your ETL project. You start with the business why, you detail the technical how, you prove that it's production ready, and you wrap it all up with a powerful story about what you learned. So now think about your own work. What was the most important lesson you learned from your last project? Because that's the story you need to be ready to tell.